Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Retirement Compass, brought to you by the team of Stonebridge Wealth Systems. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, and I'm joined in the studio by the co-founder, Tim Kulhanek, and partner, Jeremy Gove. We've got a really fun show for you today. The title of today's show is Mark Your Calendars, Big Birthdays for Retirement Planning. We know that one of the most confusing things that can trip folks up and keep them procrastinating from engaging in financial planning is not knowing what to do when. But we're going to peel back the curtain and cover 25 years of key milestones that you need to know about for your retirement. Tim, Jeremy, this is going to be a really fun show. Excited to be here with you guys this week.
Yeah, same here.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
And here's the interesting thing, right? Aging doesn't necessarily come with good connotations. We were kind of joking before the show. It can come with aching backs, right? Things start to shift a little bit, some gray hairs, all that fun stuff. But from a retirement planning perspective, there's actually a lot to look forward to about getting older. And this is going to be a really, really fun, informative conversation.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, well, let's dive in. So let's start with the decade of our 50s. That's what we're going to cover in this segment. The first milestone we want to cover is age 50. What is that folks need to know about reaching this important milestone?
So you get some options. So the people that said, I wish I would have started saving earlier, or I wish I would have started earlier, this is the show that is going to help them see how they could catch up.
Yes.
Maybe not missing, 20 years, but they could still start catching up.
And really make up for some lost time.
Yeah, make up for some lost time.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, you can put $7,000 in your IRA, right? And you can put in your 401k $23,500. So let's say you're 49. You turn 50. Now you can add an additional $7,500 to your 401k every year, and you can add an additional $1,000 to your IRA. So now we're adding $8,000 to our IRAs and Roth IRAs, but in our 401k we're a little over $30,000.
Right, so that can really make up some lost time
helps.
for sure. So those catch-up contributions kick in at age 50, and now what happens at age 55?
So at age 55, it's the same type of situation where you're adding
to your HSAs, right? You can do some more.
It's adding to your HSA. So you can add an additional $1,000 to your HSA.
Your health savings account.
Yes, the health savings account, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Perfect, no worries. And then the next big birthday to look forward to in the decade of our 50s is kind of interesting. It's a half birthday. And I know you have small kids at home. You've raised 2 daughters. It's a big deal when you're little to say, I'm 3.5, I'm 4.5, right? Oh, yeah. We kind of stop celebrating the half birthdays at some point until age 59.5. Why is this such a critical milestone?
So if you're going to withdraw money out of an IRA or really any savings account early before you're 59.5, you pay a 10% penalty. At 59.5, that goes away, right? So we lose that penalty, if you want to call it that. Some 401k plans or retirement plans, employer retirement plans, offer you to do what's called an in-service distribution, where you can actually take money from your 401k and roll it over to an IRA. Not all plans allow that, but some do. And
this is, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, so you can actually do that when you turn 59.5, typically, in most of those plans.
So really, you're able to have more flexibility and more control over your money at that point, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I like to use the analogy that, when you think about the options and the flexibility between an IRA and a 401k, and anyone who's managed, who actually really enjoys managing their own money, there's a few of them out there. There's not that many people who enjoy doing financial market research, believe it or not, which is why Jeremy and I and our team have a job to do.
Right.
But they'll tell you firsthand, you have a limited fund menu when you have a 401k. And it's kind of like the difference between, in Lincoln, we've got a Shields, right? Sporting goods. And one of my favorite stores, they got a nice little restaurant in there that I like to take my family to. There's a little play place for the kids to kind of burn off some energy. But if I want to go find a pair of tennis shoes, I can go to Shields and I have every option under the sun. I've got Nike, Adidas, K-Swiss, On, you name it, they're going to have it. If the girls need new shoes, if they're going to play soccer, we can find soccer shoes of any brand. Some brands run a little bit more narrow, some a little bit wider and a little more flexible depending on how you're made. We're all made uniquely, right?
Yes, yep.
Well, an IRA is similar to that in the sense that you can really custom tailor an IRA investment strategy to your unique financial characteristics, your risk profile, your age, your station in life, accumulation, distribution, all those different things. A 401k is just more one size fits most. You're going to have the same plan. If you're 50 or 55 or 59 and a half, or 64 and you're about to retire at 65, you have the same options as the person that was just hired that just graduated from college, that's 22. There's not a different plan as you move through your financial trajectory there. So by doing a in-service rollover, you're going to have a lot more options. A lot of people don't know that this is an option. I had a gentleman in my office recently who he's really good at financial market research. It's that's more of his job. I'd say he focuses more on that because he knows he's about to retire from what he's been doing he could do what he does for a living. He could do it in his sleep type of a thing. And he wasn't putting money into his Roth IRA or his Roth 401k, and he was upset, or I shouldn't say upset, he was frustrated because his income phased him, between him and his wife, he was phased out of making Roth IRA contributions.
So he made too much in order to contribute to the Roth, right?
Precisely. So like this year, once you're over $246,000 of adjusted gross income, you're out, right? You can't make a Roth IRA contribution. And because he has IRAs, he couldn't do a backdoor Roth, so that was out. And he's like, I'm just not going to do it. I can't. I wish you could help me find a way to put money in my Roth IRA. What can we do? And I started to come up with some strategies to reduce his AGI. But then I looked at it, I'm like, wait a minute. Why don't we just do Roth 401k contributions? And I brought that to his attention. He said, because there's terrible options in my 401k. I don't like the investment options. They don't make money. I'm not making near what I'm making in my IRA. I said, okay. You're 59. In October, you're going to be 59 and a half. Let's just do it in October. And then you do an in-service rollover. And he goes, what did you call that? And we went through this process. Long story shorter, he contacted his employer, found out, he emailed me. He's like, hey, guess what, Tim? Found out it is an option. I can do the in-service rollover. Now I can max out my Roth 401k. Forget about doing $8,000. Now I can do $31,000 of tax-free dollars put into a retirement savings vehicle, and I can manage it the way I want to.
Yeah, awesome. And that, again, just gives you more freedom, more control, more flexibility over your hard-earned money, which is really an awesome thing. As we wrap up this segment, I know that we always say on the show, it's never too early to get started with your retirement planning. Sometimes I think folks put this off. A lot of times the decade of your 50s is the year where you're like, okay, maybe I should start to pay attention to this, right?
Yeah.
Why would you say it's so crucial for folks to really start planning through and having the right withdrawal strategy for how they'll generate income for themselves once they get to retirement during this critical decade of their 50s?
The Employee Benefit Research Institute, EBRI, did a study last year, and they found that 58% of folks who are now retired sooner than what they anticipated they would. And so it's really critical to make sure that you get this right on the front end. And so often, and I think the folks watching will resonate with this, so often when you think about your financial life, by the time you get to your 60s and you've been accumulating resources for the last 40 plus years in some cases, because you've been working since that first job at the local grocery store bagging groceries, you've accumulated these resources, but like Jeremy said on past shows, most people don't stay in one job their entire career. So you might have 3 or 4 401ks over here, a couple IRAs here, some life insurance, some annuities, all these different tools, but you don't know really how they work as part of a plan. What the Retirement Compass is designed to do, and with our complimentary written financial plan, is to group those all together in one comprehensive solution so it serves your purposes as best as possible so you can achieve those retirement goals that you've been seeking. We'd like to get started with you calling the number at the bottom of the screen.
Wonderful. Tim, Jeremy, thank you so much. A great kind of, wrap-up summary of the decade of our 50s. We've got a lot more big birthdays to cover. But to our viewers at home, we encourage you to reach out to the team of Stonebridge Wealth Systems for your very own complimentary written financial plan. You can do so in 2 ways. You're welcome to call 866-256-7778, or if you'd rather connect online, just grab that smartphone that we know is sitting right there next to you. You can click that QR code, and that will get you connected as well. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, we're going to dive into the decade of your 60s. So many key milestone birthdays to look forward to. Stay with us to find out what those are right after this.
I own a motel I was able to buy out of college. When I actually ended up buying the motel, I was leaving. I had just passed the life and health license, and I was gonna sell Medicare supplements and long-term care. I told the owner of the motel that, hey, I'm gonna be leaving. I was giving him a 6 months heads up that, hey, I'll train whoever you wanna bring in. He said, I'd actually rather sell you the motel than bring in a new manager because he never showed up. So he didn't have to do anything. It was kind of like an ATM for him. And so, when you own your own business, there's a lot of people that got to be paid. There's marketing that has to be done. There's a lot of different dynamics that go into running a motel. It actually taught me to think outside the box a little bit. And so I started looking around, what are other things I can do? Because I really liked helping people. I liked solving problems for them. And there's a big difference between selling something and actually finding solutions to problems. When you're thinking about personal finance and managing somebody's retirement for them, they've worked for 40 years saving all this money and now they're retiring. They're turning this over to you to take and run with it. So it's a big deal. I think we can always do stuff better. There's always room for improvement. And so I want to read as much as I can. I want to study as much as I can so that I can do a better job for my clients, which they're counting on me to get the job done for them.
Welcome back. You're watching The Retirement Compass, brought to you by the team of Stonebridge Wealth Systems. I'm Kristen Oakley here with both Tim and Jeremy, and a very fun conversation we are having today, working our way through 25 years worth of key milestone birthdays. There's a lot to look forward to about getting older from a financial planning standpoint. If you're just tuning in, we just covered the decade of our 50s. Congratulations, you're now 60 years old. Time to dive into that decade, and man, this is a very important decade for retirement planning. So what's the first thing you want to highlight?
Well, so the first thing that, if you happen to be a widow, you can actually start drawing Social Security at 60. So that is an option, but there are some restrictions and some things that you'd want to do. So if you're 60 and you're a widow, don't just go turn on your Social Security. You definitely want to do some planning around that, right?
For sure, yep.
But also, in 2025, you can actually, this is a newer rule, where if you're 60 to 63, you can start adding additional money on top of what we had already talked about in your 50s, right?
Right.
So now in the 23.5 that you would normally start with in your 40s or whatever, then you can start adding $11,250 to that. So now we're adding $34,750 in catch-up contributions to our retirement accounts that are
workplace
provided
retirement,
through our employer, yes.
Right, yeah. So 401ks and 403bs and things like that, you can put away even more, which is really exciting. So talk about catching up, right? It's called the super catch-up contribution for a reason.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can I just say though that it goes off the rails with these rules because they added this not just for like 401ks, but they added them for simple and SEP IRAs too. And the simple rules will make your head will explode because you could potentially have the normal catch-up. You could have the catch-up that is like the mid-tier super catch-up, depending on whether your employer has over a certain number of employees or not. I think it's 100 employees or not. And your employer authorizes it, or you could have this 60 to 63, and all of these are dependent on your employer facilitating these types of things. It gets really confusing really fast. Like another one of those don't go it alone type of things.
Right, for sure. Lots to know, and thank you for pointing that out. All right, next up on our list, age 62. So what's important about this big birthday?
This is where like a lot of people are going to say, oh, I'm eligible for Social Security, I'm going to take it while I can get it, right? And so you are first eligible for retirement benefits. So Jeremy went over when you're first eligible for survivor benefits is age 60. When you're first eligible for benefits on your own work record would be age 62. You have to have the 40 credits. So you have to be currently insured is what we call it. And you can start drawing those benefits early at a reduced amount. So if your full retirement age is 67, let's say you were born in 1960 or later, you pull the benefits at 62, you're going to get a 30% reduction. So if you're supposed to get 2,000, you'll get 14 or 100 or whatever. So not only is it reduced, but it's also going to be subject to what's called the annual earnings test, which is $23,400, so not really a livable wage. So you got to be careful, like Jeremy said, and whether or not you pull the trigger on that, because you only have about a year to change your mind and pay the benefits back, and then you're kind of stuck.
You can get a one-time do-over, right? If you realize you turn it on too early. Yeah, and that's
but only of those first 12 months. If you don't do it in those first 12 months, then
you're locked in.
Too sad.
And you have to give the money back.
Exactly.
Right. That's the catch to it all.
For sure. Yeah.
I think we've had one person in all the years we've worked in this.
Jeff had one person.
Yeah, Jeff had one person actually do that.
He had somebody who retired, pulled Social Security, then scheduled an appointment with him and came in and said, hey, how am I looking for retirement? You want to do it in the opposite order, right?
Yes.
Come see us first before you pull
the trigger, if that's possible, right? And for sure. Well, and again, just because you can turn on your Social Security at 62 doesn't necessarily mean it's the right choice, right? A lot of people don't realize, I think that's what's really sad when they're like, yay, I've turned 62, let me just go ahead and turn it on. Not realizing they've locked themselves into a potentially 30% reduction of their benefit permanently for the rest of their life. All right, well, we could do a whole show on that, but let's move on now to age 65. Now, with this big birthday comes a very important word, the M word, which is?
Medicare.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yes.
Think about that one now. So you're eligible for Medicare at age 65. Again, there's some nuance here. I wish it was simple. I wish it was just easier to do this. But like the number one thing that I hear from people when they come in, we start having these conversations, or after they've watched this show, they're like, I thought I'd just be able to retire and sail off in the sunset and live my life, but good gravy. I've got all these different things to try to figure out: Medicare, Social Security, income-related monthly adjustment amounts, HSAs. Once you turn 65, if you go on Medicare, you can no longer contribute to a health savings account. So if you have an HSA, and you're going to work beyond age 65, then it's like, hey, don't take Medicare A or B. Well, I don't want to get a penalty. Well, that's okay, because you have a special election period later on because you had qualifying coverage, but you have to file the right forms. There's a lot involved there. That's why we built our team at Stonebridge to include specialists in these different areas. We've actually got people on staff who just focus specifically on Medicare and the rules there, because there's a lot of tentacles involved, making sure you get this done properly.
Well, and I love that you guys provide that one-stop shop, because we say this on the show a lot. How you make a decision in one area of your financial life can and will affect all the others. That's why you have to look at things from a comprehensive, holistic perspective. And for example, just real quick with Medicare, not to get into the weeds, it's a 2-year look back. So they're going to look at your income from age 63 to determine how much they're going to charge you for your Medicare premiums at age 65 and so on and so forth. If folks don't know that and they make some big financial decision, maybe they sell a house, right? And they have this influx, while all of a sudden their Medicare premiums go up and they have no idea why. It's critical to pay attention to.
Yeah, I had someone who, again, this shows how this is all tied together. She inherited some money from, unfortunately, her son had passed away, and it was his 401k at work. And he said, Mom, I'm going to make you the beneficiary because you'll make sure that it gets spread out to all the nieces and nephews the way I want it to. So she inherited the money. She cashed it out like he had asked. She wrote checks to all the nieces and nephews. Well, what happened? A couple years later, she gets a letter in the mail from Medicare that says, hey, about that, you owe $500 more per month for your Medicare premiums. Instead of paying $185, you're going to pay $685 per month because your income was so high.
Right.
All because, and that could have been completely avoided if we would have just filled out the beneficiary form properly. There's no reason to go from A to B to C, D, and E. We could have just gone just directly here.
Thank you for bringing that up, because again, so many people fall into these pitfalls and have no idea. All right, so age 65, now it's time to talk about what's known as the FRA birthday, otherwise known as your full retirement age birthday. So this could be, for some folks, it could still be 66 and some change, but for most people it's age 67. What are we talking about?
Well, let me go back to the HSA real quick before we jump into that. So if you are contributing to an HSA and you are going to start Medicare at 65, you do need to stop contributing to that 6 months prior to you signing up.
Good to know. Okay.
So that's something that we want to just let everybody know. And I had that happen with a client. She was wanting to start Medicare. She didn't tell me she was contributing to her HSA because she had just started doing that with a new employer. And so we had further conversations, and I realized that, and we actually had to stop the Medicare because she was still contributing. So I just want to throw that out there real quick. But going back to your full retirement age with Social Security, now we can draw Social Security without any penalties. We're going to get what we're supposed to get based off of our full retirement age.
100% of what you're entitled to, right?
100% of what we're entitled to. And again, this doesn't mean you should do that yet. We still want to do some planning, but that's how that would work. So if I wait and I kick that down the road to age 70, I can get an 8% growth on my Social Security for every year I don't draw from 67. But that's how that works.
Right. Well, and another thing we should point out just real quickly, again, not to get too much into the weeds, but if you're still working prior to your full retirement age and you collect Social Security, you could be subject to something known as the givebacks, meaning if you trigger over a certain income threshold, you might not get all of your benefit. So not only is it being reduced, now you got to give some of it back, right? So,
And when you turn your full retirement age, that goes away. So now you can make $1 million a year if you wanted to.
Yeah, for sure.
And still collect your Social Security.
Well, as we wrap up, I know so much goes on in the decade of our 60s. How do you help folks make these decisions and really look at things from a comprehensive, holistic perspective in this critical decade to make sure they're on track and taking advantage of these good milestones?
Well, let's just start by talking about Social Security. According to Boston University economics professor Larry Kulhanek, the Social Security Handbook contains roughly 2,728 rules that outline all the different provisions of how the program works. Then there's a second set of documents called the Program Operating Manual System, or POMS, which contains maybe another 100,000 rules to explain the 2,728 rules in the Social Security handbook. So when you look at it closely, the Social Security program as a whole is pretty close, if not more complicated than the Internal Revenue Service's tax code. That's what you're up against, and that's why we have designed this firm the way we did with the Retirement Compass, looking at income, investment, tax, healthcare, and legacy, the full gamut of financial planning to ensure that all those areas are covered with a specialist who's experienced in these different areas to be your guide, and we'd like to do the same for our viewers today.
Wonderful. And not only can folks come in and receive that complimentary written financial plan and have you map out these milestones for them, I know you have an awesome resource that you're also going to be able to share with folks when they come in with you, right? Talk about that.
Yeah, we actually do. We have the 2025 important milestones, and we also have the retirement calendar that's going to basically be your Cliff's Notes guide to the show today, that's going to say, hey, by the way, here's those key ages that Tim and Jeremy were talking about on the show that you need to be aware of.
Wonderful. So to get your hands on that guide, and really the best thing you can do for yourself is to come in and sit down with the team of Stonebridge Wealth Systems and have them map this out for you. We encourage you to reach out. You can call to schedule your time to come in and get that complimentary written financial plan and your complimentary guide by calling 866-256-7778. Or again, you're also welcome to scan that QR code, and that will get you connected as well. Well, we've covered the decade of our 50s. We've covered the decade of your 60s. When we come back, time to talk about your 70s. Stay with us.
My story started when I was in college. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I knew it was going to be in the financial industry. I took a lot of accounting and finance classes. I thought I'd probably work in like a bigger company and work my way through maybe the accounting department. But then when I was doing a internship the summer before my senior year, I walked into a business. I was trying to sell magazine ads. I don't know if I call it magazine ads, but basically ad space in the back of the UNK Student Handbook and Planner, which was a difficult sell because, nobody uses pen and paper planners anymore, at least not college students. But I made my best pitch to some financial advisors. I happened to be Scott Noctegal that I met with that day. When I went for the close and tried to see if he was ready to sign up for some ad space, he said, yeah, no, I'm not interested in that, but it takes a lot of courage to have somebody to be willing to walk into a business, especially a business that really doesn't cater to your target audience, to put yourself out there in a way that the odds of you being successful are probably pretty low. That's the type of person we'd be looking for at our firm. Have you decided what you want to do? And I said, no, I really haven't, but I know I want to work with finance because I like numbers, and math's always been my favorite subject, and working with kind of complex equations, almost like a puzzle. And so that's really where it all began.
Well, welcome back to the Retirement Compass, where today we are walking you through 25 years of key milestone birthdays. This is called Mark Your Calendars. We want you to be aware of these key birthdays and what it means for you to take more control of your hard-earned money. We've covered the decade of our 50s, the decade of our 60s. Congratulations, you've reached the age of 70. What's the first thing on the list folks need to know about that key birthday?
Well, if you're not drawing Social Security at this point, you definitely want to start that. It's not going to grow anymore, so you should turn it on right now.
They won't call and tell you to, though.
But they will not call and tell you to.
Right, that's on you.
Yeah. I actually met with a gentleman who was 73 about a month ago, and he has not started Social Security yet.
Oh, no,
and he's only going to
bless.
get 6 months back.
Yeah, he's only going to get 6 months back. And so
Right.
for some reason he thought it was 75, and he was looking at the RMD age, not Social Security. So
Right.
it is easy to confuse these things together.
For sure. And we talked in the last segment, so full retirement age is the point you get 100% of what you're entitled to with Social Security. But if you delay it till age 70, you get a guaranteed 8% increase per year. So that can make a big difference for folks.
Yeah,
but again,
absolutely.
don't wait beyond age 70, right?
Yeah,
Because the amount of
that's
the
right.
check won't go up.
That's right.
All right, so now we have age 73 and or age 75. What do we need to know about that?
So we need to start drawing our RMDs, right? So we've talked a little bit about that in other shows. The RMD is something that you have to take out of all of your qualified accounts that are tax deferred. So your 401k, your IRAs, those things, we've got to start drawing RMDs out of those.
Right, yeah. And again, it's based on the year you were born, and that's been a rule that has changed a lot over the last few years. Currently, it's age 73. If you were born after the year 1960, rather,
yeah.
then it's going to be be age 75, those required minimum distributions. Yeah. You know, we also forgot to mention age 70 and a half, another half birthday, sorry, as I'm going back here, for QCDs, right?
Yeah, qualified charitable distributions. There's a cool little strategy you can use with QCDs. So let's say that you're in a situation where you were contributing to an IRA throughout your career, but you made too much money to deduct it, so it was a non-deductible contribution. So you have after-tax contributions. The government uses something called the pro rata rule, where every dollar you take out is going to be a percentage of pre-tax or after-tax contribution and a percentage of gain. So what I did with one client is she was trying to do conversions, but she also wanted to do QCDs. Well, you can't QCD after-tax money. So let's say that somebody has $100,000 in an IRA and $50,000 is after-tax contributions, $50,000 is gain. What we did is we QCD'd the $50,000 of earnings, and then we converted the $50,000 of after-tax earnings, and guess how much she paid in tax on that? Zero, because it was all after-tax money.
Right, yeah.
So it's and that QCD counted towards her RMD as well.
Right, awesome.
Yeah.
What a beautiful
Fun
strategy. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's the key, right? You don't know what you don't know, and there's so much to know, and I think that, you know, there's only so much we can talk about in a 30-minute television show. We've been covering 25 years worth of key birthdays. How do you want to sum up what our viewers need to take away from today's conversation?
We talk a lot about a guy. You know, I took my folks to, we were talking about concerts on the way over to the studio today, and I took my folks to Andrea Bocelli here this past winter. My dad said it was the best concert he'd ever seen. But at the beginning of the show, you know, there's all this noise going on because the orchestra's, you know, warming up, and there's a violin and a cello and some woodwinds, and it almost sounds like cats fighting.
And chaos, right?
And chaos.
Yep.
But that changes when this guy, really well dressed, right, with a little coat tail, comes out, and he raises this stick up in the air after he stands on this little pedestal, and all of a sudden, silence, right?
Yes.
And he starts waving this wand, and all of a sudden, all of these instruments start playing in unison in the orchestra. And it's one of the most beautiful sounds you've ever seen. And it was for my dad. That's why he said that. And that's how most people's financial plans work. There's chaos. We'd like to be the conductor to make sure that everything plays to the same sheet of music.
What a beautiful analogy to wrap up a great show. Tim, Jeremy, thank you so much. And to our viewers at home, thank you again for watching. We appreciate you being here. Again, we encourage you to reach out to Stonebridge Wealth Systems. Not only can you receive your complimentary written financial plan, but you can get your own big birthday milestone guide to help you along your journey as well. 866-256-7778 is the number to call, or click that QR code to get connected. Be safe, be happy, be blessed. We'll see you next time here on the Retirement Compass.